everyone, I'm Yana Smakula. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm starting a new series on my channel with my dear friend Denzil Quick from Spellbinders.
Hey, everybody.
Hey Denzil, so good to see you.
Great to see you as well.
Okay, so the series that we're starting today is called Paper Crafting Myth Busters. I invited Denzil to join me and talk about different paper crafting myths and maybe share a little bit more technical information with you so that we can, understand how things work a little bit better.
Right. Perfect. That's a great intro, Yana, because we get a lot of questions from, we have a couple of just amazing customer service people who, Pri and Sam, Priscilla and Samantha. We call them Pri and Sam.
Yeah.
And they get lots of questions from everybody about all different kinds of things, about paper, about dyes, about embossing, about you name it, anything to do with paper crafting. And we've been thinking about how do we organize these questions in a way to where we can answer them, because if we get one or two or five calls about it, we know there's probably 100 questions about it. So how do we answer those questions? And so Yana and I were talking about how do we put this together, and this was our idea.
Yeah, plus I get questions from you guys as well. And Denzil and I recently did a video talking about a new mini die cutting machine, Scout, and so many of you loved that video. So many of you loved me having Denzil on my channel and sharing the technical stuff that I thought it would be fun to ask Denzil to join me more regularly here and share more info with you.
Yana is halfway around the world, but we're the marvel of technology brings us close together, and we're able to do things like this. And so let's just dive in and talk about paper. What do you say?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So for our first episode, we decided we're going to talk about paper theory and all things paper. So down here, I have my laptop with my little cheat sheet and my questions. So I'm just going to jump right to question number 1. What is the best paper for paper crafting?
Gosh, the best paper for paper crafting. So let's break down paper. Let's break down that question a little bit, okay? A couple different parts and pieces. So first of all, paper. I went to high school back in the 1800s. Feels like. So I went to high school a long time ago, and a friend from high school actually went to college for paper crafting science, or the science of paper. So he actually, I looked it up this morning. I was thinking about this when I was coming in to work, and there's actually 15 colleges in the United States that you can get a degree in paper, right? It's paper science. So
wow, fancy.
Paper is a very broad subject, right?
It is. It is very, very broad because there are so many different kinds of paper.
So many kinds of paper. So what we're going to talk about today is specifically about paper crafting, okay? And so we have 4 main things that we really do with Spellbinders and with our tools. And Spellbinders started out as a die cutting company, but what's the one word in our name?
Paper.
Spellbinders, paper crafts, paper arts.
Paper
right?
arts.
So Spellbinders, paper arts, right?
Yes.
So it's like we are about paper even more so than die cutting, because die cutting's our tool, but paper is at the essence of everything that we do. So everything we make is with paper, right?
Yes.
So we primarily do die cutting. So one technique. So we're going to talk about specific papers for die cutting, and then we're going to talk about embossing and how papers relate to embossing. And I've got some examples here on the table and we'll use the overhead camera and stuff.
Yeah.
And then we've got hot foil is also a really important technique that we do. And our latest technique that people have fallen in love with is really the BetterPress. So we'll talk about how different papers interact with all those different kinds of things.
Yeah,
is that cool?
It is. So I guess there is just no simple answer to my question, because
there is no simple answer to your question. So
yeah,
there's a lot, because there are, so like I said, people get degrees in paper. So it's not like there's one kind of paper. Like, I used to think, okay, there's paper that goes through a copier and then there's other paper, right?
Yeah.
When you really break it down, there's so many kinds of paper. And so one of the things that we do here as spellbinders is we try to, anytime we come out with something new or something old, and there's a new paper or there's a new substrate or new material to cut, we test it and test it and test it over and over and over. We got lots of great people here in the office who are started as passionate crafters and now it's their living, but it's always been their passion, just like you, Yana, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you started just as a crafter, right?
It was just a hobby for me. Yeah, it was just.
Yeah. So we lots of times we'll send materials to Yana and she'll test them out, or we have Kim here who is on the other side of the wall over here who's testing stuff all day, all the time. We've got Robin and Josie who were testing all these materials with inks and paper and how does it die cut, how does it do this, how does it do that. So one of the things we try to do is we try to educate each other. So we try to have communication within the building to teach each other about different things. One of the things we also do is, when it's appropriate, we'll have outside speakers come in. So we had an outside guest come in to teach us about paper not long ago, several months ago, but within the last year. We had somebody that came in who's been in the paper industry for over 30 years and taught the whole staff, literally the whole staff, everybody from accounting to every department about paper and just like some of the fundamentals of paper. So there's a company called Clampett Paper that I think they're in Dallas, but they have this paper school workbook, and it has all different kinds of questions about paper. Okay, so it has all different, well, not questions, I guess, answers. So it answers all your questions. So it has several chapters on it. And so basically they walked us through this book. And some of the really interesting things in here is about like just paper making. Some of the important things about paper is like how it's made. There are multiple different kinds of paper fibers, so we've probably all heard of hardwoods and softwoods, but there's also cotton, which we'll talk about that a little bit later with our BetterPress paper. But then there's different plant materials that are, bamboo and other kinds of grasses and things that they use for paper. But then all the other whitening agents and things. So we talked and we learned about the whole paper process. Now, granted, this was a one-day class. It wasn't a 4-year degree. So there's still a lot that we don't know and a lot that probably people watching know. But paper, I just want to show you this because understanding paper is a really, really complex product. And this book talks about how to make it. And we walk through all of this so paper, like when they start out from a mill. So, some of the ingredients we talked about with paper. And then there's also like a lot of the new papers, they're synthetic papers. So we'll talk a little bit about those today too, and how they interact with some of our products. And then in the paper making process, paper, when it starts out as pulp, there is 99% water. Okay. When it's in that big batch, when it's in that big vat, I'm sure everybody's seen like how they make paper. When it's in that water, the vat, it starts out and it's 99% water. And then it goes through the process and the wringers and the rollers and the drying and all that. And when it's done, it's 5% water. So,
wow.
So it's really pretty amazing how the whole process works. And there's tons of YouTube videos about paper, how paper is made. And if you get a chance, check out some of those videos because it's a really interesting process. But then also recognize that one of the things that it's really important to know is like we're in Phoenix, Arizona. It's a dry heat, right? So dryness, the humidity level has a lot to do with papers and how it interacts with your dyes and embossing and foiling and inks and this and that. So, so it's important to know that your climate also makes a difference. And then also if you're close to like seawater, if the salt air can also make a difference on inks and paper and the interaction between everything. Because a lot of what we do is stamping or inking. And Paul Antonio was here a couple days ago, and we were talking with him, and I think he might even mention in his video, it's really important to understand that there is a relationship between the ink itself and the paper is really important when you're talking about BetterPress and ink and stuff. And not all papers react or interact the same. So some of it is trial and error. See what you like, find out. So you have to experiment a little bit too. So the main thing I want you to realize is not all paper is the same.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So you've tested enough paper, Yana, to understand, we are always sending you samples and things.
Yes.
That you try things out and you say, oh, you have a pile. This is the works pile. This is the doesn't work pile, right?
Yeah.
So like when you're looking at paper, big things that people talk about is paper weight. Do you have some questions that you have?
I do have a question. So is it a myth that the 100-pound or the 80-pound paper is the best for die cutting? Because I have heard that. People have mentioned that, but I'm not sure. Is it true or not? Let's ask the expert on paper.
Wow, that's a great question. So that's one myth that we're here to bust today.
Yes.
Or hopefully bring some resolution to it. So when I'm going to go back to our book here real quick. So paper, let's talk about, you've heard pounds, like you just mentioned, 100-pound paper or 80-pound paper. You've also heard of GSM. A lot of people have probably heard of GSM.
We do have a lot of the GSM in Europe. I think it is actually more common to describe paper by GSM in Europe versus in the US.
You are 100% correct. So GSM is grams per square meter.
Yep.
So pounds is obviously a US kind of thing. So pounds, out of this book, and there's other resources on the web that will talk about this too. So in the US, we make describing paper weight very complicated, and we overcomplicate it by a lot.
For sure.
So it's not, it should be the GSM is a very easy system to figure out.
Yes.
It's grams per square meter. It doesn't matter what kind of paper it is. It's based on grams per square meter. What is the weight per square meter? Right? So in the US system, when you hear pounds, it depends on what kind of paper you're talking about. So as you can see, like writing paper, printing paper, cover stock, which is kind of where our cardstock falls into, Bristol, index, newsprint. So it depends on what kind of paper you're talking about. So like there's this big complicated grid that you can see that talks about, okay, like let's say 100-pound cover is equivalent to a 72-pound bond.
Well, oh my gosh.
And that's equivalent to a 124-pound Bristol. And so it gets really complicated.
It's very confusing. Very confusing.
It's very confusing. So depending on what kind of paper you have will depend on 100-pound weight in a Bristol is different from 100-pound weight in a cover. It's different from 100-pound weight in index. So we're going to talk about cover weight, which is kind of where we have cardstock falls into that. So cardstock, and again, there's a lot of variables with that. Different mills produce, we talked earlier about softwood and hardwood. Different mills produce their papers with different kinds of wood. So some will have all softwood, or some will have hardwood, or a blend, or whatever. And so there's a lot of variables there. So what we really want to talk about is like our cardstock. We test our cardstock to make sure that it cuts really, really well. So when I talk about cuts, hop back to the overhead for a few minutes here. So when I talk about how a paper cuts, if you could zoom in a little bit there too, you see all these details. So not only does it cut out all these little small bits and pieces well, that it also gives you lines when we're doing the deboss or the scoring. So it looks really nice. And so you could see just, you could not, on the vast majority of papers, it will not hold that deboss or that cut line, correct? So our papers that we test here, our cardstock is designed to take the cutting with limited number of chads or little pieces that hang on or little, you'll get them every now and then, but the vast majority of cuts are like super clean and super detailed. You can see that there, you can see that here. Look at all these little holes that so if you're using somebody else's cardstock or somebody else's printed paper or whatever, you might not get that kind of detail.
So not all paper cuts the same. That's what you're trying to say. Yes, like
not all paper cuts the same or can take this kind of detail. So like when you have this is one of our, this is a little piece of our cardstock. So you can see that it's dyed. So it's dyed all the way through, and it's smooth. So the texture is smooth. So we look at all these qualities and when we're selecting a paper, and as we work with different paper suppliers or mills or whatever, and we look at the qualities of first of all, how does it cut? And then, how does it do these other things, emboss and oil, and we'll get to those too. But first and foremost is how does it cut? And we like solid color cardstock that cuts all the way through because we're die cutting and we're layering. So it's important to have it dyed. So it's, it's the same color basically all the way through. So you flip from one side to the other side, it's all the same color. You look at the core, it's all the same color. So that's a part of the process. And then there are other colors. So like pattern papers, like we sell some pattern paper, depending on what you're doing, pattern papers are perfectly fine. But just recognize like they all start out as a white piece of paper and it's printed on the surface, right? And so the core is not the same, but you get nice, pretty patterns. And we try to make our patterns smaller so that when you do cut them out, it's, you don't get a little piece of something, you actually get to see some of the pattern. And then there are other brands, like this is My Mind's Eye, and they do double-sided paper. But even though this is double-sided, just recognize, like, let me find a solid piece in here. So this is more, it's got a pattern to it, but it's more like a solid. But the core is still white. So like if you do cut this out, just recognize you'll see that little white edge, that white core, which is fine. It depends on what your design aesthetic you're going for, but they have beautiful designs, beautiful patterns. So just recognize that that's what we're looking for when we're going with selecting colors in cardstock. We're looking for fully dyed. We're looking for the smoothness, the density, the weight. So there's more than just the weight. So back to your original question, is 8-pound or 100-pound the best? Well, it really depends on other characteristics as well. If it works, it's best. That's kind of a silly answer, but it's true that we select our cardstocks, we select our papers on their performance. So we test everything and make sure that it works well. So for die cutting, it's about the detail. Can it cut the detail?
Exactly, because you sometimes might even have paper that is a little bit too thick. Like
you nailed it right there.
There's like a 300 GSM paper, and if you use one of our die, if you use I think you had like a cup die on one of the cards just now. So if you use that cup die, it is not going to cut all of the detail just because of the thickness of that paper.
Right. Exactly. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about when you talk about cutting, this is what I think of as cutting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, die cutting machine. So, the scissors is a shearing action, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, boom, these are sharp edges, right? So I could even take this, right? And so I could take this, and if I apply some pressure to it, I can cut with one blade, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a sharp blade, right? So with dies, and pull a die out. This is a chemically etched die. So this is one of our dies. I cannot. So that's a blade. There's no way I can cut myself with that blade.
And this actually brings us to my next question. Now that you've showed the difference between scissors and the sharp edge and a thin die with no sharp edge, tell us what kinds of dies are there and how do they work?
Sure, sure. So, like we've talked about in the past, steel rule dies used to be very, very popular. There's still a lot of people still use them out there, and I think they're wonderful. I wish they were more popular. But steel rule dies are this. It's a blade.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, inside steel rule die, it's a blade. So when it cuts. It it doesn't cut like scissors, but it's a sharp blade that cuts. Literally, it's a sharp blade that cuts into the paper down into the cutting pad, right? So you get a nice, you notice when you cut with steel wool dies, you don't get any of that. You know how sometimes when you cut with these, you'll get
a little beveled edge. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes, I really like that detail when I cut with the thin dies. It's very beautiful. You really don't have that with the steel rule die.
It's easier to draw it real quickly. So
we're getting a Denzil diagram.
You're going to get a Denzil drawing, right?
Yeah.
People love it. So.
I love Denzil drawings. Very informative. I mean, you get a lot of information from Denzil's drawings.
So if this is a piece of paper, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And a steel rule die is a really sharp it's like a razor, literally. It's a piece of steel blade that's bent into a shape. So if you look at it from its side, that's what it looks like. On the chemically etched, so you can only bend it into so many shapes is the challenge with those. You can only do basic shapes. You can get some detail, but it's really difficult. So it's literally a person that's bending the steel into a place and putting it into a wood block is how they make those. With these, you can get a lot more detail, but they're not as sharp. So if you look at these from the side, if I were to take this and cut it in half, it would look like this. So the blade edge would look like this. So this would be the blade edge. So this would be the flat part here, and this raised edge would be this here. So this will cut through paper. This basically punches through paper. So it's the pressure. So you'll notice, like when you're cutting on a roller machine, like if you have the more detail you have, if you have a die that has a whole lot of detail, like this die, this is going to be a lot more, especially when you're cutting through all the circles and all these parts. It's going to be a lot stiffer when you roll through it, right? That's because of the detail, and that's because it's punching through the paper. It's not really cutting the paper.
So
it's using force.
So it's not really a die cutting machine. It's a die punching machine. Is that what you're saying?
It's funny. My friend Kevin over at Ellison that I used to work with, we used to talk about that all the time. It's not really a die cutting machine. It's more like a die punching machine. Or he talks about it as like this explodes the paper. So it really does. So yeah, so there are different kinds of dies. Those are the two primary kinds of dies in paper crafting in our industry. Chemically etched has really taken over the industry because of the amount of detail that you can get from these and the artistic creativity that you can have with paper crafting. If you want to cut really thick materials, steel wool dies are the way to go.
Yes, but you will not have all of that beautiful detail that you get
You
with
will
the
not have all
etched
of that
dies.
beautiful detail. That's right. That's right. So then also just talk real quickly about like, like whites, like there are different colors, like all of these, I think these three are considered to be whites.
Yeah, I mean, white paper is just white paper, is it not? Is it another myth that we're going to bust? Is
That's
all white,
myth we're going to bust.
yeah, is all white paper the same?
White paper is not the same. So believe that or not,
Do tell.
all three of these are white paper. So this is probably, in addition to all of our papers that we have and sell and stuff, this is probably one of the standards that I think you use a lot too. This is Nina.
Yes.
So Nina, it's a mill, right? They're a mill in Wisconsin. And so this is Nina 100-pound. I think this is their Arctic white, or I believe that's what this is. But even within Nina, they have antique white, Arctic white, all different kinds. So this is a different company, and you can see if I just fold this out by itself, you'd say, oh yeah, that's white. If I fold this out, you'd say, oh yeah, that one's white. And if I just fold this one out, you'd say, oh yeah, that one's white. But if I put them all three together, you say, oh yeah, they're very different.
They are very different. You can clearly see the difference when you combine, when you bring the three different, or however many different white cardstocks together, you can then start to see that some white paper might be a little bit warm white, some might be a little bit cold white. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. When we're picking our palette, our color palette, we try to go to, Kim and Josie have an amazing color eye. So like when you look at like our colors, so you can take virtually any of our colors work together.
Yes.
It doesn't matter, the hues and the tones, and it all just works so well together. So I'm really proud of the colors, the cardstock that they select. So when you look at whites, there are warm whites, there are cool whites. We use a lot of the Nina whites, which is a great base. So our papers have all been tested to die cut. Nina works beautifully die cutting. So I just wanted to make sure that we covered that as well. So
okay. Now I also have another question. So there are all of these kinds of specialty papers out there. There's like, glitter paper, mirror paper, metallic paper, but then there's also vellum.
vellum.
What kind of paper is vellum? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Vellum, believe it or not, it's a myth that vellum is paper.
What? Oh. Vellum is not paper?
Look at vellum. True vellum is actually the oldest form of writing. So true vellum is actually from animal skins, sheepskin, cow skin, goat skin. They used to dry skins, after dinner. They used to, dry the animal skins, and that's what some of the first papers or first things that were used for writing, I guess. So the oldest writing is on, some calf skins, vellum. So it's actually stretched animal skin, kind of gross. But,
it is.
But so like when Paul was here the other day, again, I refer back to Paul, he was, as you know, he was the scribe, or one of the scribes for the Royal Crown Office for the Queen of England, and for over 20 years. And they still, I think, as a part of tradition, they still write a lot of bills and laws and things on true vellum because of the archival quality of it, because of the historical nature of it and stuff. So all the things that we usually call vellum is actually paper vellum. So it's just different. It's different type of paper, but it's not true vellum. So we call it vellum, but technically it's not vellum.
Okay, well, that's interesting. It's actually very fascinating. I did not know that. I really did not know that. Did not know that.
there are a lot of other, we do sell a lot of other specialty materials too, and from foams to glitter, a lot of the glitter stuff is mica, has mica. So those are like either things that are added during the manufacturing process or post-process, post-production, they'll add a layer on. They can do that. And some of those work great for certain applications, and you just have to test and look in the details about what we say we've tested with, or like it, I know you use a lot of the specialty papers too, and like in your card making tutorials and stuff on your videos, you'll say, hey, I use this and it works great for die cutting. Doesn't work for embossing or for this or whatever. But so some of those specialty materials do have specialty applications, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess if you're trying to ask a question, what is the best paper for paper crafting, you kind of have to be a little bit more specific and know exactly what type of paper crafting technique you're going to be using, because what paper is great for die cutting might not be the best paper for stamping or the best paper for hot foiling. So it just depends on what you want to do.
That's 100% correct.
Okay.
So when we talk about embossing,
that's what I was going to say. That brings me to my next question. What paper is the best for 2D and 3D embossing?
Great question. So we're going to go back to the overhead camera here. And so this is one of our cardstocks. So this is this is one of our cardstocks that, you also use to cut paper out with. So our cardstocks also work really, really well with embossing. As you can see that takes those 3D and also 2D emboss. So you can see on these cards here, so this card has a 2D emboss background, and then there's a 3D emboss background, which is cool. And then one of the techniques that some people like to do with it, I think it works better with 2D emboss, is like I'm showing you about the My Mind's Eye paper here. So some people do like to do it's still a popular technique that if you use a paper that has, where is my solid color here? So if I take like a solid color like this, if I emboss this, and then if I sand it, that white core comes through. So that gives it kind of a distressed look and stuff. So that was really popular for a while, still is popular, but mostly what we do is emboss the solid core paper, so the solid core papers will give you a really nice, beautiful emboss.
I remember the Hero Arts used to have these, I believe they were called layering papers, and they were white core paper with a printed color. And they were mostly popular for that technique that you just mentioned, where you 2D emboss it with a 2D embossing folder, then just take your sanding block and sand the color away. So the color that was pressed, like debossed, that color remained, but the embossed ended up being white, which was a really nice technique.
One of the things about embossing, though, that most people, they don't recognize is that embossing takes a lot of power. It's really difficult. I'm going to show you a folder here too. So it takes a lot of power to emboss paper. So you're changing the form of the paper. So embossing is very, very tricky when it comes to the quality of the emboss that you're going to get. And the saturation of paper, how much water, going back to our original discussion where we started today, like all those fibers, when you see the long fibers and the short fibers, how much the fiber content and that paper mixture, like of that in manufacturing process, will determine a lot of how this looks, as well as your moisture level. So we have a new mister because we do so much embossing. This is the Mighty Mister. This thing, you have one of these, right?
I do have one of these. I was just looking for mine, but I think it fell and I can't reach it. So we're going to look at yours.
This is the best. This is literally the best thing ever. So I don't know if you can see it or not, but most misters kind of spit stuff out. It's like this one. It's super fine mist. I don't even know if you can even see that on the camera, but it's a super, super fine mist. So, and it's wonderful. This is if you do any kind of embossing, this is the best thing ever. So,
I now have mine, sorry. Yes, I'm actually, it's very hot here, so I'm just going to spritz myself a little bit to bring down the temperature.
Two functions, right? Dual functionality.
Actually, it has many functions because, you know, you can spray your house plants because they need the extra moisture. If you need to iron your clothing, you can mist it with water using this mister. And of course, you know, to mist your paper for the 3D embossing. So love, 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 love this tool.
Obviously, you've thought about this way more than I have. So yeah, so another thing too, so this is a must. This is really important. And then another thing too, we're going to talk later about our cotton paper. So the fibers in cotton paper are just gorgeous. I just love it. So the negative part about it, it's expensive.
It is expensive, yeah.
But if you're doing holiday cards, like this is this is one of our new holiday embossing folders, and just look at that. So this is our cotton paper that was designed for our BetterPress. We'll talk more about it later, but just so you can see the detail that it holds. This is our cardstock, which does a really, really nice job, very beautiful. But there's just something about this, the texture. We haven't figured out. With video, we have voice, we have audio and video, but we haven't figured out touch and smell yet. So, but if you could feel this, the luxury of this paper is just so stunning. I love it. And so, like the relationship between an embossing folder, like between a positive and negative side, that is, look at all the detail in there. So this has to line up perfect, so, without any, you can't be a millimeter off or anything. So the registration is very, very,
it's very important.
Yeah, very important. So when you actually emboss this, make sure to, a lot of people don't know that almost all the time, and again, every design is a little bit different. So sometimes we get designs back from the factory and they don't quite work right. We have to tweak them and, manipulate them and mess with them a little bit. But virtually every embossing folder is designed to go through the inside first. So just want to make sure you go inside first. There's like a few outliers that are really weird exceptions where you might go the open side first, but like 99.9% of all embossing folders go the inside first. And that allows you to really get the registration and this kind of detail that I'm in awe of this every time I see these details.
I am in awe as well. Our 3D embossing folders are indeed fantastic. And you know what? I have never tried using them with our cotton paper. So guess what I'm doing after? No. Guess what I'm doing after this video? I'm testing. I am testing some folders with our BetterPress paper. So now that we covered the papers for the embossing folders, there is also a different type of paper that we need to talk about that works best for hot foil stamping or glimmer. Yeah. So what kind of paper is that?
So you were, I affectionately call you the Glimmer Queen sometimes because
thank you.
I know you love yourself some shiny stuff.
I do. I do.
So you are really, really good with glimmer. You have all the techniques, and we talked about it on previous videos where when glimmer first came out, you were not a huge fan.
I was not. I was very skeptical. I was very skeptical about glimmer. It took me, I don't know, it took me a few months to get my feet wet, to learn the tips and tricks, but now glimmer sits permanently on my desk and it has a permanent spot. It's never going away. And I shall say I'm going to keep using this machine forever. It's just that good.
And as you, I mean, like you said, it's of all the techniques we talk about today, of all the things that you do for card making, it is the most difficult.
It is.
There's no question about it. But once you learn it, it's kind of like shooting, if you're a basketball player or whatever, like shooting a 3-point shot, it's like, that's a very difficult shot. It's a long way. Once you learn how to do it, master it, you become next level. So, you can see like this, we do have our specialty glimmer paper that has it's not a true pulp paper, a paper made from paper fibers and wood and hardwoods and stuff like we talked about, but it's more of a synthetic paper. So it takes that glimmer foil really, really well.
To me, it actually reminds me a little bit of Yupo paper, the alcohol Yupo paper. It's very, very smooth. I would say ultra smooth paper.
Yes. It's from the same family of papers, so that also works really well. This is our brand. It's from a different factory, but it's the same kind of technology, basically. But the Yupo paper works very well also. But just the shine, the way that it receives the foil is just beautiful in all foils. So one thing that I do want to talk about too, so this is like the paper, so it has it feels super smooth, right? So like when touching it, it feels slick almost. And so you can also foil on our cardstock. So our cardstock does take foil, but foil is one tricky, unusual thing, right? As you know. So pigments in foil and dyes and inks and pigments in inks and dyes in paper and stuff, there's weird anomalies that happen with all different kinds of colors. So one color might work on this paper just fine, and another color might not, right? You've seen that happen.
I have noticed that. I mean, I will honestly say that I have my favorite cardstocks that I can safely foil on. And I will even go as far as to say that I have my favorite foil colors. And I know that they will work on any kind of paper, any kind of paper suitable for foiling. With other colors of cardstock and other colors of foil, there is a little bit of a tricky learning curve. It might not always work, or you might need to play with it a little bit longer to get it to work. But it's well worth it in the end.
I haven't found any foils that don't work with our glimmer paper.
Oh yes, all of our foil colors work fantastic.
All work with that. But when you combine them with cardstock, sometimes there's some variation, right?
Yes, some will work better, some will give you a little bit of a trouble, and you might need to, play with it some more.
Yes. So foiling, beautiful technique, and when you get foiling down, God bless you, because man, that really is a difference maker in your cards.
It is.
It makes such a huge difference. Yes.
Next, and I think this is my final question for this video. What paper is best for BetterPress? We now have this new amazing BetterPress system that everybody is so excited about. And I know that there is paper that works especially well for BetterPress. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Exactly. Perfect. Well, BetterPress is our version of letterpress, right? The tried and true technique that's been around for hundreds of years. I think I looked at before, and I think it was like, the original Heidelberg press was like invented in like 1490 or something like that. So it's been around for a long, long time. The papers that we use, so we tested when we went through this, when we were doing the testing, we tested literally over 100 different kinds of papers from probably 30 or 40 different mills. So we tested a lot because we wanted to replicate. We wanted it to be easy because we recognized that the learning curve with the hot foil, with glimmer, there is that learning curve. And we wanted a technique that we thought could be easy for anybody, day one user, or, if you've been doing this for 20 years. We wanted something that would work well right out of the gate. So there are other papers that do work, and they work okay, and some work better than others. And even our cardstock does work okay with BetterPress. But if you want the true, like the beauty of BetterPress is when I touch it and feel it again, that if we can get tactile feel into video someday, that'll be really cool.
Yeah, it's very hard to convey this.
AI thing.
Yeah, yeah, like I don't know, you get some attachment or something, and you all of a sudden get that tactile experience.
Yes, yes. So if you touch it and feel it, it just feels gorgeous because it presses the ink down into the actual paper. So this is what a plate looks like. I don't know if everybody can see it, plate there, but and I never clean my plates. I probably should, but I don't. We have tested, like I said, over 100 different kinds of paper, and we found this particular cotton paper that works best. We have it in 3 shades, so you can see there's a white, and then there's kind of an ivory bisque, and then there's the gray. Pebble is what we call it, but the 3 different colors there that are very, very popular, and it's a little thicker. So this is 120-pound paper. If we are looking at the U.S. version, I think it's 200-ish GSM, right around there. And but it's very thick. When you hold it, it makes that noise, and you can tell that it just feels really nice in your hand. It has a good quality feel, and that takes the ink really, really well. So if you just want to make a simple card and just BetterPress design in there, you still get that tactile feeling, and it die cuts beautifully, and like we showed earlier, it embosses like crazy, like nobody's business. So the embossing, it works well with the BetterPress. It works great with. And then if you want to add some color to your design, it takes watercolor just marvelously. It just works beautiful with watercolor pens and pencils and stuff. Sometimes with alcohol, it bleeds a little bit, So just beware of that. But with watercolor stuff, it works great. And it dries instantly. So again, going back to, it's not just the paper, but it's the ink in the paper. But this paper we tested, and we just fell in love with it. So we get this from a mill in Europe, and it is just gorgeous when you look at the detail that you get, the impression you get, the tactile feel that you get. I went to buy, might be sacrilege because we're in a card making community, right? But I went to buy a card a few weeks ago for birthday for somebody, and I looked at a similar card that had this kind of tactile feel, this quality of paper, and the cover was $15.
$15.
$15.
Wow. Well,
yeah. So just the quality of this paper, I can't say enough good things about it. So
BetterPress paper is my favorite. I will say it.
Yeah.
I mean,
what are your thoughts about it?
I love this paper because of how thick it is and how high quality it is. And I not only use it for BetterPress, I actually use it for foiling as well. It does not always work best for foiling. I have fantastic results when I need to foil just a little sentiment or an outline image. It will not give you that fantastic result if you want to foil something super, like a solid detail plate. That's not going to work on the BetterPress paper, but a sentiment or, you know, an outline image that you then want to color maybe with your watercolors, that is the best paper on the market. And actually, it's because it is 100% cotton paper, it is also fantastic just for watercolor. If you enjoy watercoloring,
Great point. Yeah.
Try that paper for your next watercoloring project, and you will love it. After this video, I will test it for 3D embossing, and I'm excited to see how that's going to look.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So another thing too, before I forget, it just popped in my head. I want to make sure that, you know, I hope that everybody's enjoyed our talk about paper today. In also, like in the comments or you know, on Yana's post, in the comments, please, if you have any myths or questions or thoughts that you have about paper crafting, it can be die cutting, it can be, we'll get special guests on here too, right? You know, so it's not just about me and you, but we want to make this all better for everyone, right? So we want to, we'll get experts from other parts of the industry. If it's inks, it could be Ranger, or Robin, who is on our staff here, used to work for Ranger, and she's an ink expert. Boy, she could tell you, she can talk all day about this.
She can, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll get Robin on here. We'll get whoever we need to on here. But just ask your questions. So in the comments below, please feel free to ask questions, and we're here to try and correct some of the thoughts or make everybody better crafters and answer those questions that we can.
Yeah. So the goal of this series is to go really in depth and give you really detailed information. Well, maybe not 4 years of college worth of paper, but maybe an hour worth of paper information and, you know, all the details. So if you have questions that you don't know the answers to, or if there's something that you don't understand, leave us a comment below, and we'll try to get to it in our next episode.
Yeah, we have episodes. We're planning to do episodes to show you some of the technical reasons behind crafting. So crafting is a beautiful art form, but there's also a mix of science and art and beauty that go into making beautiful projects. So we want you to, if you can understand a little bit of the technical reasons behind what you're doing, sometimes that makes you a better artist.
I always want to know the why. I need to know the why to be better.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I think this has been very this has been fantastic. So much new information. I did not know a lot about this. I did not know anything about vellum that you mentioned. So thank you, Denzil, for sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you for joining us here today. We appreciate your wisdom. We appreciate your thoughts and your expertise. And well, I look forward to our next episode together. Do we know what we're going to talk about next?
We have a list.
Yeah, we do. We do have a list. We're going to keep it a secret for now.
and again, you know, we have a list, but also your questions below. And
True.
We'll try to get to everybody. We'll try to answer everybody's questions sooner or later. So
yes. Okay. Well, thank you, Denzil. Appreciate you joining us today. Thank you, everyone, for spending your time with us today. And we will see you again next time. Bye.
Happy crafting. Bye.